This is a full story. Kitten wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. After dating for 10 years, he still never mentioned marriage, so I decided to kick him to the curb. Slap. The crisp sound of my palm echoed in the air, and I was instantly enveloped by pain. Hailey, you've been clinging to Rockey for 10 years. Are you planning to hold on to him for life? I didn't cover my face. I just quietly listened to Serena's passionate accusations. Indeed, how many 10-year spans does a person get? Since I met Rockey at 16, I fell in love with him. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. He possessed everything of mine, yet he hadn't even given me a proper title. You're shameless. If Rockey truly wanted to marry you, would he still be waiting? Serena's brother was Rockey's good friend, and they had grown up together. She had mocked me more than once for stealing her position. In her eyes, I was nothing but a complete homewrecker, and a rather unqualified one at that. You, the daughter of a small restaurant, actually think you can marry Rockey? Rockey's family ran a chain of restaurants, with branches nationwide. By comparison, his conditions were indeed good. I came from a remote town, where my family ran a small local cuisine restaurant near a tourist spot. Logically speaking, I would never have crossed paths with Rockey. You're pitiful. Day after day of waiting only fueled Serena's resentment. Since learning of my relationship with Rockey, none of his friends had treated me kindly, especially Serena. Whenever Rockey wasn't home, she would find chances to create trouble, and Rockey had never offered me any words of comfort. Over the 10 years, his career grew increasingly busy, leaving me with precious little time. More importantly, he had never reciprocated my love. I glanced at the lonely little villa, in this prime location where I had lived day and night, feeling desolate. Perhaps it was time for me to leave. Do you really want Rockey that badly? What? Serena was taken aback. Fine, there's no better day than today. I'm breaking up with him. What tricks are you playing? I can't believe you actually. I looked at Serena's doubtful expression and smiled helplessly. She wanted me to leave so badly, but when I said it, she didn't believe me. Hypocritical and sad. Under Serena's probing gaze, I naturally took out my phone. I dialed the number I had memorized by heart, listening to the ringing sound on the other end. Soon, the man picked up the call. Hello? His voice was as magnetic and pleasant as ever. Rockey, let's break up. Without waiting for Rockey's response, I hung up immediately. The grievances of the past 10 years would die with my memories moving forward. After that day, I deactivated my Facebook. While unbinding some apps, I finally took out the long-removed SIM card. A series of notification sounds rang out, with no messages or calls from Rockey. I chuckled at myself, and after a moment, started operating again. Just as I had unbound half, the phone suddenly rang, and Rockey's name appeared on the screen. My hand hung in midair. The ringing continued for 60 seconds. Quickly, Rockey's call came through again. He kept calling, but I still didn't answer. After 4 or 5 calls, I received a text from Rockey. Pick up. Just 3 short words, yet I felt a surge of anger. I smiled and decisively removed the SIM card, and the world instantly fell silent. In truth, I couldn't entirely blame him. After all, I had been playing the wolf is coming story, hoping to force him into marriage. During my university graduation, on the day I received my graduate qualifications, after I gave him everything, every time I thought he would take our relationship seriously, he would casually say, "Be good, just wait a bit longer." Poverty aside, even being with Rockey without a title felt like a great honor. That Hailey, she's just a pretty face. Ultimately, Rockey is just playing around with her. I had heard similar taunts countless times. Among them, Serena's background was the best, and she was the most aggressive. She always thought I was in the way of her marrying Rockey. Little did she know, I had never seen where that road led. Rockey's towering figure blocked my imagined path entirely, leaving no room to slip by. But this time, I had completely changed course. With a flick of my wrist, I tossed that small SIM card into the trash bag. A month later, the summer night breeze was particularly refreshing, just like my feelings after leaving Rockey. Not far away, I saw Tony standing at the door, blushing as he greeted me. He was my new colleague. I had started working at an editorial department a week ago. Before today's meeting, my computer suddenly malfunctioned, and all my materials were stuck on it, causing me to sweat anxiously. Just as I thought I would be scolded, Tony, a tech guy, helped me fix it. After the meeting went smoothly, I initially wanted to buy him a milk tea to show my gratitude, but then I saw Tony shyly scratching his head, struggling for a while before finally asking, "Can we have dinner together tonight?" Looking at that familiar shy face, I inexplicably agreed. "Sorry, I didn't know you'd arrive so early." "No worries." We followed the waiter into the restaurant. It was a French restaurant, with an elegant atmosphere filled with young couples sitting across from each other. "This restaurant has amazing desserts. You'll definitely be surprised later," Tony kindly recommended. I just smiled and said nothing. I had actually been here before. Only back then, it was just me and Rockey at a table. Ironically, it turned out adapting to life without Rockey wasn't that hard after all. "Rockey, you're so unreasonable. I've asked you to meet me for half a month." A delicate voice came from behind, sounding somewhat familiar. "I thought the one asking me out was your brother." The man's tone was low, tinged with dissatisfaction. I didn't even need to look up to guess who was speaking. Why was Rockey here? "Serena, I warn you, this is the last time." With that, Rockey stood up, his long legs moving swiftly. He turned so quickly that I couldn't even dodge. Bam! I crashed into his arms. "Hailey, are you okay?" With Tony's exclamation, the atmosphere instantly turned tense. "Hailey, what are you doing here?" Serena also stood up, and upon seeing me, she furiously stomped her feet. Rockey quickly grabbed my arm. His grip wasn't hard, but it was enough to keep me from escaping. His hawk-like gaze glanced scornfully at Tony, before settling back on me. "Is this your reason for not going home?" "Going home? I was just a stranger sharing a room with him. There was no home to speak of." I mocked him inwardly but quickly steadied my emotions. "Long time no see." Ha! Rockey glanced at me and Tony, then nonchalantly released me, sneering as he walked away. Serena followed him, unable to do anything else. I pretended not to care and headed to where the waiter was leading us. After taking our seats, there was a moment of silence. I picked up the menu, forcing myself to appear calm. I could even sense Tony's puzzled gaze on me, but he was considerate enough not to press the issue. "Are you two a couple? Valentine's Day is coming soon. Couples dining today get a discount and a free dessert." Soon after we ordered, the enthusiastic server broke the awkward silence, but it only made the atmosphere more uncomfortable. Tony lowered his head slightly, glancing at me from the side. I looked at the bill. This place wasn't cheap, and this promotion was quite generous. Clearly, it was a leading question. "Hailey." Tony's face was flushed, his hopeful gaze fixed on me, yet he still respected my answer. "Okay, thank you," I replied softly, giving the server an affirmative answer. Tony's eyes brightened, and he nodded vigorously, handing the menu to the server. "Thank you." The server smiled knowingly, leaving us some space. "Are you two a couple? We have a special offer for..." Not far away, I heard the waiter start introducing again, but this time it was to Rockey and Serena. Serena wore an expectant expression while Rockey remained cold. "Does your friend know if he's coming?" Tony, unsure how to refer to Rockey, used your friend as a euphemism. I smiled, changing the subject. "You just said their desserts are really good. Do you like sweets?" "Not really." Tony's handsome face turned even redder. "It just feels like you would like them." Hearing what Tony struggled to say, I was taken aback. After just 1 week of working together, he somehow knew I liked sweets. I lowered my head, and my conversation with Tony made me miss Rockey and the waiter's dialogue. I once thought that as long as Rockey was there, my gaze would always follow him. My attention focused entirely on him. But now, I didn't care about Rockey and Serena's situation at all, not even knowing when they left. After dinner, Tony gentlemanly accompanied me to hail a cab by the roadside. As the breeze blew, I politely thanked him. "You really don't have to be so polite. We've known each other for a while." Tony's face was slightly red, adjusting his golden glasses, his cheeks blushing shyly throughout the evening. I felt a bit puzzled. "The graduate exchange at Jiaotong University, remember?" As Tony spoke, he brought back memories I hadn't focused on. He was referring to an academic event I attended in college, to earn credits. "I really wanted to get to know you then, but you seemed so busy, it was hard to ask you out." I was somewhat astonished, momentarily taken aback. In fact, I wasn't busy. I had just devoted my time to someone else. "Honestly, I'm really grateful to meet you at the company." "Grateful?" I didn't understand why Tony would use such a profound word. The next moment, he revealed his secret. "Hailey, can I pursue you? I missed my chance in college. I really don't want to miss it again this time." As he spoke, fine rain suddenly began to fall, the droplets delicate and rhythmic. I felt a bit flustered. Looking at the empty taxi ahead, I quickly raised my hand to hail it. "It's raining. I'll head back first." I have an umbrella, here, take it. After getting into the car, I hurriedly handed Tony the foldable umbrella from my bag. Keep it, it's not far to the subway station. Seemingly aware of my unease and desire to escape, Tony didn't rush. Instead, he wore a relieved expression after confessing, then helped me close the car door. Through the window, I watched Tony standing in the rain. He still smiled shyly, his gaze fixed on my taxi. As the rain intensified, he finally turned and ran toward the subway station. Watching his retreating figure, I seemed to see my former self. Then, I thought of Rockey. Tonight, Rocky's gaze seemed ordinary, but there was a hint of restrained anger. A bad premonition washed over me. Perhaps breaking up wasn't as simple as I imagined. Because of tight finances, I rented a rundown little place. The shabby corridor still had sound-activated lights. You had to shout when climbing a flight of stairs. Ha! Roar, as I shouted, illuminating the staircase. I was also boosting my own courage. Hey, when I reached the top floor, a force suddenly locked me in its embrace in the dark. I was startled and began to struggle, but the man's domineering kiss silenced my words. Hailey, it's me. His taste enveloped my lips. An ambiguous aura lingered in the air. My body was pinned against the wall. Rocky's hand slipped inside my clothes. His movements were urgent, seemingly venting more than just longing. Rocky's nimble fingers explored me, about to breach my greatest defenses. I knew this meant he couldn't hold back any longer. Let go. Taking advantage of Rocky's vulnerable state, I bit down hard on his lip, and the previously dim corridor suddenly brightened again. He had blood on his lip and my clothes were disheveled. You've learned some tricks. He looked at me provocatively, barely bothering to wipe the blood away. I quickly adjusted my clothing, feeling both embarrassed and angry. Rockey, however, was unfazed. He leaned against my door, glancing at it, completely overpowering me. Are you opening it or should I? Reluctantly, I pulled out my keys and unlocked the door. Once inside, Rocky's expression was far from pleasant. Leaving me just to live here? Rockey, it's none of your business. I turned away, interrupting Rocky's critique. But he grabbed me like a chick again. This time, he pushed me onto the small sofa. On that single armchair, Rockey firmly pinned my slender waist. Rockey, let me go. My repeated refusals thoroughly angered Rockey. Hailey, is this your new trick? Perhaps losing interest. Rockey finally released me, extending his long legs and leaning back on the sofa. Is it because I pushed the wedding date back again before the business trip? From start to finish, Rockey had always looked down on me. No, in the face of Rocky's agitation, I felt oddly relieved. What disappointed me was the accumulation of the past 10 years, not his delayed wedding date or Serena's slap. A proud person like Rockey would never care about my feelings. Rockey, I always thought you were just a bit slow to warm up. If I put in the effort, you would eventually come around. Until today, when I saw Tony, I finally realized something. But the truth is, not liking someone is just that. You can't force it. You should have rejected me long ago. After all, I'm not that clingy. Ultimately, it was because Rockey had never placed me on equal footing. What was clear to everyone else, I had been foolishly blinded to. Before I could finish speaking, Rockey tightly gripped my chin. Do you like that guy from earlier? Rockey's breath was close enough for me to see the anger pulsing in his veins. My silence seemed to confirm his suspicions. A little programmer? You really have good taste. It seemed Rockey had investigated me. I replied, word for word, meeting his terrifying gaze. He's not worse than you. Hailey, do you know what you're saying? Of course, but you'll never understand. I had never praised anyone in front of Rockey. I had spoiled him. His pride wouldn't allow him to be entangled with me anymore. Rockey stood up, leaving behind a resolute back. Bang! The door slammed shut. Rockey was so proud. With that exit, it was a complete rupture. The tension that had been taut just moments ago instantly relaxed, and I collapsed into the spot where he had just leaned. His warmth still lingered, with a faint warmth against my cheek. Once upon a time, these small presences were enough to comfort my soul, but now, they no longer serve any purpose. Since that day, my interactions with Tony increased. He never asked me again whether he could pursue me. Because of him, I joined the class group and reconnected with many people. My uncle has had cirrhosis for a few years now, and recently his ascites worsened. I casually mentioned it in a call with my parents, and Tony proactively helped me book an appointment with a specialist. To avoid complications, I soon found a new place, planning to move out completely. Tony helped me find reliable tenants, greatly improving my living conditions. Life was gradually getting better. I knew I was changing for the better too. I'm not sure if it was because I had hot pot the day before, or if I was just exhausted from work lately. But the next day, I had a sore throat and lost my voice. Seeing this, the editor-in-chief told me to take a break. After dozing off for half a day, I was finally jolted awake by a mix of urgent knocking and the phone ringing. When I opened the door, I saw Tony's anxious face. "Why weren't you answering your phone?" I was so worried. This time, he didn't hold back. Once inside, he busied himself until he confirmed I had seen a doctor and taken my medicine before calming down. "Go take a nap, I'll cook something for you." He pushed me away from the kitchen, urging me to rest. He left the bedroom door slightly ajar, so I could call for him. Through the small gap, I watched him move smoothly, washing dishes, starting the stove, peeling pears. Once upon a time, I was the one doing all those things, while the one enjoying everything never knew how to cherish it. "The pear water is ready, drink it while it's warm." Tony held a porcelain bowl, carefully blowing on the steam. Health is the foundation of revolution. With good health, you can add countless zeros afterward. Tony sounded like an old man, rambling on. Suddenly, he set down the bowl and turned away to sneeze. I then remembered it was rainy season. His sneakers were the only shoes at the entrance. He hadn't brought an umbrella. Just like a child, once he set his mind on someone, he foolishly knew how to be good to them. I wondered how many people like him I might meet again. "Tony, about what you mentioned last time. I've been seriously considering it, and I can give you an answer now." My honesty made him avert his gaze. "You're sick, we can talk another day." He was dodging, his voice getting quieter. I knew Tony was avoiding the topic, just like I used to, not wanting to hear the real answer. Yes, I wanted to politely decline Tony. Because he was so good, I couldn't hurt him. Although I felt indifferent to Rockey now. Friends told me that the quickest way to end a relationship was to jump into a new one. But I wasn't that bored or cruel. "Tony, I'm sorry. Drink the pear water first." Before I could finish apologizing, Tony smiled and gently cut me off. "Do you know what I was going to say? I only know that if the pear water gets cold, it won't taste good. Do you want some noodles? I'm pretty good at cooking them." Tony ruffled my hair, then turned to the kitchen. Thoughtful, kind, gentle. I smiled. He was treating me like a child. In fact, the more I interacted with Tony, the more I realized one thing. He was different from the person I used to be. I was stubborn, and he was tender and caring. Boom! A loud clap of thunder erupted outside. Heavy raindrops pelted against the glass. I checked the weather forecast. The rain would only get heavier. The atmosphere seemed to shift a bit. Tony was still busy in the kitchen, but I worried. He hadn't brought an umbrella. How would he leave? Could he stay here? But soon, Tony brought the cooked noodles to the table, and even thoughtfully set out bowls and chopsticks. The tomato and egg noodles smelled delicious. "Hailey, wait until the noodles cool down to eat. You can't take your medicine for half an hour after eating, remember? That way, you'll recover faster. I just got a call and have to run some errands." His excuse was too flimsy. I hadn't heard any ringing. Listening to the thunderstorm outside, I couldn't help but worry. Seeing my anxiety, Tony stepped forward and gently patted my head. "Don't worry, it's just a little rain. It won't bother me." With that, he walked toward the door. When he reached the front door, his hand paused on the doorknob. Turning his back to me, though I couldn't see his face, his voice was especially low and serious. "To be honest, after I saw him in the restaurant, I looked into your relationship with him. I'm sorry, I didn't get your permission for this. Laugh at me if you want, but I'm really jealous of him." Then, Tony turned to face me, his eyes firm, every word heavy. "Hailey, no matter what you choose in the end, promise me to love yourself first. You're so wonderful. You deserve the best happiness in the world." My hand holding the pear water shook a bit, and my eyes suddenly felt wet. "Love yourself well. I deserve the best happiness in the world." Before this, no one had ever told me that. Falling for Rockey, over the past 10 years, I lost not only my youth but also myself. But at this moment, a man named Tony helped me find it back. Before I could respond, Tony rushed out into the rain, forgetting even to take an umbrella. The next day, when I felt better and returned to work, Tony had taken sick leave. I heard from the tech department that Tony was seriously ill. A bad cold with a fever of 39.2 degrees Celsius. No need to think, it was definitely from getting soaked. I felt guilty, and after sending him several texts without reply, before I could visit him, that afternoon, Tony appeared at the office wearing an N95 mask. "What are you doing here?" His face was pale, looking weak. "I'm feeling better, so I came to work." Tony pretended to be lighthearted, but my expression turned serious. "Tony, you've only rested for half a day. How could you be okay?" Seeing I was genuinely angry, he dropped the joking facade and honestly said, "I didn't want you to worry if I didn't come." He was right. I really was worried. Ultimately, he was the one caring for my feelings, but I felt worse inside. From then on, my interactions with Tony became more frequent. During the short holiday, my parents were very worried after learning about my breakup with Rockey and insisted I come home. I couldn't refuse, but all the tickets were sold out. Knowing I couldn't get a ticket, Tony volunteered to drive me home. On the way, unlike Rockey, who was rigid and quiet, Tony was funny and humorous, making the atmosphere very pleasant. Under his influence, the heavy feelings I had about visiting my parents lightened a bit. After all, these 10 years of blindly loving Rockey made my parents worried. When we reached my door, Tony was spotted by my uncle while helping me carry luggage. "Oh, isn't this the young man who helped me last time?" My uncle warmly grabbed Tony, insisting he stay for dinner, and I couldn't stop him, thinking this was going to be bad. At the dinner table, my parents kept chatting with Tony, and the atmosphere was great. "Hailey, this Tony seems like a good guy. You should hold on to him." After Tony left, my family praised him unanimously. Thanks to him, the low pressure I had expected at home disappeared, and instead, it was warm and cheerful. I found it somewhat amusing, yet I felt a bit proud inside. It seemed my heart had indeed changed. After returning to the office, my relationship with Tony changed subtly. Tony still cared for me as before, and I started to accept it. "It's going to rain soon. You should take a cab home," he reminded me. That day, despite his warning, I still got drenched. Hiding from the rain at the subway station, I pulled out my phone to call a cab when it suddenly rang. It was Rockey. This time, I didn't run away. "Hailey, haven't you caused enough trouble?" He opened with his typical accusatory tone. "Have you really found a man to provoke me?" "Hailey, I'm out of patience for this boring game. You want to get married? You can set the date yourself. The ring, the venue, do as you like." I couldn't tell if it was my imagination, but Rockey sounded frantic. A stark contrast to his usual indifference. A confused expression flashed in my mind. I must look like that now. Unfortunately, Rockey spoke too fast for me to interrupt. "But Hailey, I have one request. Cut off that guy immediately. My patience has limits." His patience has limits? Well, my 10 years of patience went to waste. I couldn't help but find it funny. "Rockey, yes, I loved you for 10 years. Taking a deep breath, I finally spoke the words I had buried deep inside. But that was because I thought you would eventually respond to me. After 10 years, I was finally seeing clearly. "Rockey, you only love the Hailey who caters to you, and I don't want to be that obedient tool anymore." A gust of wind mixed with the rain, and I couldn't tell if my tears mingled with it. But I knew I had never been clearer than now. And clearly, I was the only one awake to the reality. "Hailey, you just went out for a bit and got a bit high. That Tony can't even afford a decent Mercedes. What can he offer you? Only marrying me can give you the life you dream of." As I listened to Rockey's definition of me, the last bit of warmth in my heart vanished. In the end, it was all misplaced. "A dream life?" I murmured, dripping with endless sarcasm, as countless past images flashed through my mind. It seemed my calmness made Rockey noticeably anxious. He started to question me nonsensically. "Hailey, what do you mean? My ideal life isn't being slapped by Serena's insults. It's not enduring humiliation for a so-called love. Living without dignity, worse than a dog. And certainly not wasting 10 years. Leaving my parents to worry about me. What are you saying?" Rocky's shock didn't seem fake. Unexpectedly, I hung up the phone calmly, looking at the app that still hadn't found a driver. I ran straight toward home. A child without an umbrella just needed to run. As I ran, my phone vibrated continuously in my bag. I didn't need to look. It was surely Rockey calling. He'd only be trying to explain how he didn't know. Rockey was always like that. The fault was never his. It was always someone else's. Late affection is worthless. That saying couldn't be more accurate. The rain intensified, quickly soaking my clothes. But before I could cross the street, a man behind me pulled me into his arms. Just as I was about to struggle, I looked up and found it was Tony with an umbrella. He looked anxious, and when he saw I was drenched, he tilted the umbrella toward me, protecting me from the rain while he quickly got wet on his back. "Why are you here?" Amid the sound of rain, thankfully Tony couldn't hear my slight choke in my voice. "I was afraid you wouldn't get a cab and would get soaked." His words felt so natural, his breathing a bit ragged as if he had run all the way. I felt tears welling in my eyes. He always appeared like a light when I needed him the most. "Let's go, I'll take you home." Tony spoke naturally, the umbrella tilting even more toward me. The rain was heavy now, and not just his back was wet, even his left shoulder was soaked. Yet he maintained a gentlemanly distance from me. I felt a pang in my heart, wiped the rain and tears from my face, and instinctively took his arm, pulling him closer. Okay. This was the first time I had taken the initiative to get close to him. Tony seemed caught off guard by my action, his ears turning red, and his walk became visibly stiff. I couldn't help but laugh, but I tightened my grip on his arm. When we got home, both of us were soaked through, the thin fabric clinging to our bodies, making my underwear's lace visible. Tony quickly turned his head, feeling awkward. I blushed, but soon I noticed Tony's physique. I hadn't expected him to look so thin but be quite sturdy. My face turned even redder. Do we have ginger at home? I'll make you some ginger soup. You should go take a shower. Tony hurried toward the kitchen, barely paying attention to himself. I knew it wasn't the time for politeness, so I quickly rinsed in the bathroom and handed him my largest t-shirt. Go take a shower too, you can't get sick. There's a hairdryer in the bathroom. I'll keep an eye on the ginger soup. No need, it's just a bit of rain. I'm fine. Tony felt a bit shy, awkwardly scratching his head. I smiled, quietly making a decision, and shoved the t-shirt into his hands. Tony, remember the question from last time? I'm answering you now. What? This time, Tony was clearly caught off guard, his voice trembling a little. No more chasing. From today, no, from this moment, I, Hailey, officially become your girlfriend, Tony. I successfully witnessed the mixture of surprise, doubt, and joy on Tony's face. To be honest, it was a bit adorable, yet it didn't detract from his charm. Though my heart raced like a drum, I pretended to be casual and pointed at my lips. Do we need to seal the deal? Tony's face turned bright red, even his ears were burning. I could feel the tension in his muscles. Just when I thought something might happen, he lowered his head and headed toward the bathroom, stammering, I'll go take a shower first. I couldn't help but laugh, brushing it off as I continued making ginger soup. When Tony appeared wearing my oversized t-shirt, I couldn't help but chuckle. Maybe it was the natural differences in our bodies, or maybe he just had that perfect physique where clothes fit snugly and showed off his muscles. This shirt looked like a second skin on him, more enticing than his earlier wet look. It's a bit small, but this is my loosest shirt, I explained, suppressing my laughter. Not bad, Tony replied shyly, tugging at the hem. I thought after a shower his redness would lessen, but it only intensified. Drink this ginger soup, don't catch a cold after getting soaked. As I handed him the soup, Tony took my hand seriously and said, Hailey, I haven't answered your earlier question. What? I was momentarily confused. I want, sealing the deal. In the next moment, Tony gently pulled me into his embrace, leaning down to peck my lips. A fresh scent that was uniquely his filled my senses. He kissed me, a serious kiss that made me feel precious, like a treasure to be cherished. When he pulled away, my heart was still racing. I didn't seal the deal earlier because I was dirty from not showering, and I didn't want to mess you up. Tony explained sweetly, his honesty childlike, his eyes reflecting my figure with purity and seriousness. I smiled, and his nervousness gradually faded under my warmth. Soon, he was grinning like a child. After finishing the ginger soup, the rain outside intensified. I checked the weather forecast, it would last all night. Seeing Tony washing dishes in the kitchen, I suggested, you shouldn't go back tonight. What? Tony was surprised, almost dropping the porcelain bowl in his hands. I confidently lifted my chin, saying, You're my boyfriend now, isn't it normal to stay over at your girlfriend's place? The sound of running water continued as Tony seemed to mentally prepare himself. After a long pause, he looked at me gently and said, Okay, I'll listen to my girlfriend. The words of my girlfriend made me feel a rush. That night, it could have been even more perfect, but my small sofa was too cramped. Tony had to curl up under my pink cartoon blanket, using a big pineapple pillow as his headrest. He was beaming, his smile lighting up his face, even his brows curved in joy. Seeing his peaceful sleeping face made me smile. His happiness was all for me, how could it not make me feel elated? Back in the room, my phone rang, it was Rockey, calling multiple times followed by texts. I didn't know how he got my new number, but he always pursued what he wanted at any cost. Hailey, pick up, I want to talk to you. I didn't know Serena came to see you, but I can assure you it won't happen again. Hailey, don't act like a child. I don't believe you would leave me for that guy. I'm sorry for the past, I don't want to lose you. The phone continued ringing, texts and calls bombarding me, so I decisively turned off my phone and tossed it aside. What's wrong with Rockey today? That proud, arrogant man was actually trying to explain and apologize. I wouldn't have dared to imagine this before, but late affection is like a summer coat in winter. It's nice, but no longer needed. The next day, I held hands with Tony to work, and the office erupted. It's only been a few days, you've already made it public. You must treat us to dinner tonight. Sure, Tony, you're a lucky guy. Honestly, I'm moved by how thoughtful Tony is toward Hailey. Colleagues chimed in, already speculating about future children. When we were just holding hands, I smiled, feeling a warmth akin to a sunny April day. Tony, blushing from the teasing, held my hand tightly and didn't let go. During lunch break, the receptionist said someone was looking for me. Hailey, did you know Rockey spent the night in the rain outside your building? He's running a high fever and is in the hospital. Is your phone broken or your brain? Why didn't you answer? This is how you seduce men. It's so cheap. I knew you wouldn't easily break up with Rockey. As I stepped off the elevator, Serena pointed at me, angrily berating me. I hadn't seen her for a while. She looked more haggard and disheveled than I remembered. I had seen this kind of scene many times before, so I wasn't shocked. But Rockey's actions surprised me a little, yet it was no longer my concern. I listened calmly and then suddenly slapped her across the face. The force was a bit much. My palm stung and felt numb. Hailey, you. In Serena's eyes, I had always been a soft target, unable to retort or fight back. Serena, the things you said to me before, I'm sending them right back to you. Are you planning to shamelessly chase after Rockey for life? You pestered him when he had a girlfriend. Now you come after his ex? Serena was taken aback, speechless as she covered half her face, glaring at me. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. After saying that, I felt much more at peace with my past involving Serena. In truth, Serena was just a pitiful person. I didn't know if my words had provoked her, but her eyes reddened. Upon hearing about the receptionist's message, Tony hurried down. And seeing Serena there, he pulled me into his embrace, shielding me. What's going on? Seeing Tony's protective stance, I gently patted his shoulder, whispering, "It's okay." Serena looked astonished at our closeness, her voice trembling. You two are together? I replied coolly, and Serena seemed dazed, mumbling, "No wonder he waited outside your place all night. I'm so foolish. I was the most ridiculous one. He loves you the most. I should have realized when he told the waiter we were just friends. Rockey is just that type. He only gives fleeting glances to those he doesn't like." I didn't bother to respond to Serena. In reality, Rockey's true love was himself. Now, my choices had merely bruised his pride, that was all. Serena left. The drama came to an abrupt end, though she didn't say it. I knew she wouldn't come looking for me anymore. After all, she used to be a proud person. It was 2 weeks later when I received a call from Rockey. Tony was in the kitchen patiently deveining shrimp, his back looking so handsome. Like most couples, we spent our time shopping, dining, and watching movies together. And on weekends, he'd go to the market early to pick the freshest shrimp. After knowing how much I loved them, meanwhile, I would sit with a bag of chips, watching variety shows as he cooked. To say it wasn't sweet would be a lie, and I'd even gained a bit of weight lately. The phone kept ringing, but I didn't shy away. I picked it up. Hailey, I don't know if it's too late to say I'm sorry. On the other end, Rockey's voice was hoarse. And after a moment, he murmured, I really can't lose you. I was wrong. I want to marry you. We've been together for 10 years. No one loves you more than I do. Rockey sounded different from himself, while I gradually found my own voice. Rockey, that night you stood downstairs. Why didn't you come up to me? My calm seemed to shatter Rockey's defenses. He fell silent. Only his hurried breathing came through the line. I bit my lip and voiced the answer for him. By your nature, you should have come straight up to get me, but you didn't. You were afraid that my feelings for Tony were real, afraid that I really don't love you. Rockey, let yourself go, and let me go too. Actually, you don't love me that much. Rockey's choked voice came through, filled with self-mockery and bitter laughter, but I didn't have the heart to analyze it further. I just knew my past with Rockey was completely over. The sound of oil sizzling in the kitchen broke the silence, and soon the aroma of shrimp wafted through the air. The warmth of everyday life calmed my heart. Come try the shrimp. Be careful, it's hot. Tony brought over a plate of freshly made scallion shrimp, and I looked up to see him sweating, which made me laugh. He always appeared just at the right moment, my April day. I didn't want much. He had everything I needed. After lunch, Tony sat nervously beside me, blushing as he said, Hailey, I told my parents about us. They want to video call you. If you don't want to, it's fine. I didn't refuse. Instead, I nervously tidied myself up, blushing as I sat straight next to Tony. He seriously initiated the video call. Mom, Dad, this is my girlfriend Hailey. I like to call her Hailey, she's beautiful, isn't she? Right now, we're colleagues. Hailey is the most perfect girl I've ever met. She's beautiful, has a great personality, and does excellent work. We're both alumni of the same university. I've actually liked Hailey since school. Don't worry, Mom and Dad, I'll take good care of Hailey. Her parents like me too. Listening to this boy who held my heart become a chatterbox, praising me like a flower made me even more nervous. Tony's parents were diligent old employees. They were very nice and friendly, quickly easing my tension. After hanging up, I felt shy and poked Tony's chest playfully. "You just said my parents really like you? What a braggart." Tony wrapped his arms around my waist, letting me comfortably lean against him. "Of course, it's not just your parents. Even your uncle likes me. I've already made an appointment for a specialist next month. I'll bring your uncle in for a follow-up and show your parents around our attractions." A week later, before driving back to pick up my parents and uncle, Tony posted a moment on social media. "Even an ugly son has to meet his new father." The end. If you like Kitten's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.